It is 7:41 exactly here on this Friday morning wake-up call, and now time for Friday at the Fuzz, so I'll toss it over to Mr. Michael Greene.
Thanks, Derek. In studio with us this Friday, as most every Friday, is Elgin's Chief of Police, Chief Swoboda, and a slew of guests.
Slew?
It's a big week. Do you like that?
I like that.
I'm going to go something else, but slew worked out.
Slew.
So I'll let you introduce them, but first I want to talk real quick. Tornadoes last night, and from all accounts anyway, Elgin steered clear of Elgin, but that doesn't mean you guys aren't helping out. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on this morning, and was there any reports of any damage or anything else like that?
Yeah, I don't know that we got any reports of any damage. I know last night we were finishing up our Citizens Police Academy. I walked over to our Emergency Operations Center over at the basement of City Hall, and Assistant Chief Tim Moroder was there and was able to spend some time talking with him. But it appears from all accounts, and unless any residents hear anything or have anything different, there was obviously a lot of rain, and but we didn't have any of the tornadoes, obviously, or any of the major damage. It sounds like this morning just found out that the fire chief and assistant fire chief did head out west to assist. I think Corinne said one of our trucks is out there as well. South Elgin's out there as well. So it sounds like they're kind of, not with the daylight, because I know I was watching the news last night as well. The nighttime was obviously causing a big problem to assess what damage was out there. So sounds like they're doing it today. I know that on the police side, I think
Eye in the Sky.
Eye in the Sky. We're going to have Commander O'Shea out there with our Air One unit to take some pictures and see what's going on with some of the damage. So
and
hopefully
he was flying himself.
And I don't believe he was.
He's not piloting?
I don't believe he's piloting, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, but he's trying.
He's trying. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
We did have the tornado sirens go off in Huntley, where I live.
Yeah.
So we spent some time with my wife and two children, and I spent some time in our basement doing homework.
Good.
In between my daughter's sobs, because she thought that she would wake up or come out of nothing.
It's scary when you're a kid. I remember that a few times as well. I mean, it's scary when you're an adult too, obviously, when it's that close. But there were some monster ones out there out west. There were the pictures were
all the pictures
horrific.
were amazing.
Yeah,
amazingly scary.
Mm-hmm. You always see those things on TV, and it's important to realize that those things do can and eventually will at some point happen around here. It can happen anywhere, especially here in the Midwest. So just listening to the things, supplies, and again, Assistant Chief Moroder has been doing a great job with a lot of the things with emergency management, and coupled with the East of Motor Fall with the police with Karen Flanagan until the fire department a year or so ago was able to get that position. So it's really stepped up, and so you can really get involved with the CERT team, the Community Emergency Response Team, which does a fantastic job on days like, maybe if there's not a tornado, but there's still flooding or lights being out or wires being down after we had some of those straight winds issues maybe a year or so ago. So there are a lot of ways to get involved and at least be prepared yourself. If you don't want to run out and help other people, like you just concerned more with like your house and your family, you just want to learn some of the basic things. The CERT team's a great way to get that started. And then the second phase of that, if you do want to then respond and assist other places or other communities, that's a whole nother level. But at least getting to know the basics is a great first start, and the CERT team with Karen Flanagan's a great way to do that.
Most all of the calls for service and any kind of emergency situation, a lot of those calls go into 911, and it's Communications Week this week.
Next week,
as you told me.
Yep.
And you brought a few people with you. Maybe you can introduce them, and then if they wouldn't mind, Corinne and Dan wouldn't mind kind of talking about what you guys do and what you do in emergency situations and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, Communications Week next week, it's just a way to recognize the important work that they do. Police and fire are on the front lines when, people show up, so we're the most visible. But the real first responders are the people who answer the phone calls and make sure they get the right equipment and the right people to the right places at the right time and as quickly as possible. And that's not as easily, anybody that's ever been up in our communications center realizes just how important the work they do is and just how hectic it is. And so it's a great thing through our Citizens Police Academy. There's a section that they learn about that, and it's always one of their things that I had no idea. Because people think it's all calm, and you call, somebody answers, and they send the police. It's not a big deal. But they don't realize is the babies that are delivered, or the dad that's not breathing and is having a heart attack, or the child that was just pulled out of a pool. And you go from how do I get to Portillo's, somebody calling the police for directions someplace, which is crazy, and then the very next call is, my child's not breathing, help. And so they need to be able to turn the switch extremely quick. They're never out there to actually see the results of what's happening, so that's a whole nother kind of aspect. So it's just a very important career one that we don't do enough of to say thank you. And so this next week is kind of meant to do that, just a reminder with there. And so with that, we have Corinne and Dan. I'll let them introduce themselves, but they're here just to kind of talk a little bit about what they do. The idea behind this week is very basic, just that it's just to remember that they're here and doing important work. So with that, may I'll start with Corinne. And Corinne, if you want to maybe introduce yourself, and then we'll let Dan do that.
Sure. I'm Corinne. I've been with Elgin for about 8.5 years or so as a dispatcher. It's a job I love and I take very seriously, and Elgin's a great place to work. We appreciate them recognizing the week and honoring us, also allowing us to come on the show. I work day shift and lots of overtime, but it's enjoyable. Dan?
Yeah, my name is Dan. I've been a dispatcher for about 1.5 years. It's a very rewarding job, especially in Elgin, where it really feels like we do work as a team between us in communications with the fire department, with the police department. It's a very cohesive unit to where everybody kind of helps each other out. So it's really kind of makes our jobs a little bit easier when working in a city where everything is so cohesive.
I probably had other questions that I wanted to lead with first, but that kind of leads me to a different question, which would be, what do you base that feeling off of? Have you worked in communications for other towns that would go unnamed, and you could say, here's the difference that I've experienced with a real life example?
This is my first job in communications, 911 communications for anywhere. I do know others that work in different departments, unnamed,
yep.
And there can be difficulties where there's a certain level of respect that at least we get from either the fire department or the police department. With although there's 1 week for us next week, but it's every day in roll call, or someone will stop up and they'll say, great job, you guys did a great job, tracking this phone, or finding these people, and those little bits, they help, and it builds a whole level of, I guess, cohesiveness with everyone.
Is there a certain sense of community? Do you have a lot of interaction with communicators from other nearby municipalities or towns or cities and stuff like that? I imagine that you would, because you deal with a lot of the same stuff.
Definitely we do, especially on bigger incidents. Anytime we need assistance from another town, anywhere around the borders of our city, there's a lot of in and out areas, which are ours or other agencies. There's a lot of interaction with them. It's always a very good experience. I've worked at other departments, and what I love about Elgin is exactly like Dan said. There's a lot of cohesiveness. There's a lot of mutual respect on all regards between the dispatchers, the police officers, the fire department, and it is a great feeling to know that you are appreciated. And again, with this just being the 1 week next week to kind of honor us in a way, or recognize us, it is something that goes on throughout the entire year.
I'm sure that there's no typical day for a dispatcher.
No.
And that's got to be both fun, exciting, as well as scary, right? You don't know day to day what your day is going to be like.
Right, and I think part of that adrenaline almost is what keeps us working as hard as we do. You do, the chief is very right with, you take a call for, a stalled vehicle, or, how do I get to court, or when's my court date, something like that.
You see these things now with social media where somebody's called in 12 times because they're having a dispute about a pizza being delivered, and they're not paying for it, and you have to deal with that inebriated person over and over and over, and how do you deal with it? And it's tying up phone line. There's a lot that goes into it.
And I think one of the things that I love about our agency is customer service is definitely a priority for us. And even with the, continual callers or intoxicated subjects, whatever it is, everybody is handled with the same amount of respect, whether it's an emergency in our eyes or in theirs. Because that's what we all need to realize, is that somebody's calling us for help. So for them, it is the most important call of the day. We may have to prioritize it differently, but we understand and respect that when we're on the phones with them.
From a training and learning standpoint, there's a lot, especially now with just the way communications are overall in society. Is there a lot where that's shared, or do you go like ongoing training? Because see these things on social media, you know, the 911 dispatcher takes this call and is rude or starts yelling at the person, and how do you guys learn from that? And I mean, it's got to be hard sometimes as well to not be that person because of anything else that might be going on. I mean, Chief has talked about in the past that you don't know that when an officer pulls you over and talks to you that he didn't just leaving a house
Right.
where he had to tell them that their child died, and now he stops you for speeding and you're, you know, whatever. You don't know the attitude, and you've got to just start fresh every interaction.
And yeah, that's, I think, the biggest thing to learn on the job is, you know, the composure, to keep yourself, you know, take a deep breath, and, you know, you could go from dealing with somebody over and over and over again to, you know, someone who needs you to help them, you know, save their child's life. And when that happens, if you rev it up to panic mode right away, no one's being helped. It's just, you know, finding somewhere in there just to be calm. And, you know, I know you get it with experience.
Mm-hmm.
Corinne could probably talk on it a little bit more, but you know, once you experience a whole, you know, different level of, or like the spectrum of everything at least once, then you kind of get like, you know, more I guess accustomed to it, or confident
Confident
maybe
in yourself,
might be better.
maybe how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So, Dana, stay with you for a second. So, a year and a half. So, you're still fairly new at it.
Yes.
What was the onboarding like for you? Did you go somewhere to train? Did you train at the Elgin Police in
Yeah.
the communications department? Did they just throw you on the phones the first day and say, good luck?
Yeah, all of our training for the most part is in-house. So it starts about 2 weeks of classroom training, just kind of getting familiar with our computer programs and, you know, listening to old calls to where, you know, you kind of hear examples of what it could actually consist of and what you might hear and will hear. And then for the next 6 months, it's a training each month, different shift, usually different trainer, and you're introduced to the different aspects of the job slowly. You know, as your comfort level rises, you know, you'll move on to something else. But there is that one day where, you know, the phone rings and it's yours to answer, and you know, you just have to make the jump.
Corinne, you've been doing this for 8.5 years, you said, with Elgin anyway.
Yes.
Is there ever a time, you talked about, you know, the confidence building, you answer the phone and you just dread
You know, I think,
that it was you that answered, or?
you know, I think every time a TC hears 911 ring, we all have that instant second of, oh gosh, what is it going to be? And I think you have to have that to do this job, otherwise you're not doing it the right way. You have to be prepared and think that maybe this is a real emergency. But I think with time you get used to how to handle it and how to manage your own emotions, because that's really a key thing. We're there to help the people on the other end. They don't know what to expect. We're the experts, and we have to guide them through that process. So we have to be prepared at all times. And, you know, with the training process, it's just a matter of exposure. We go through a very rigorous testing process before we're even hired. And then the initial training period is, you know, you're monitored by senior TCs, and we don't let anybody answer a phone if we don't think they're ready to.
I had a question and went off with it, but that's all right. Curious as to some of the gamut of maybe personally. I'll start with Dan. I'm fascinated with you're still newer, so can I go with that? What's the one call you would say was just the most kind of heart-wrenching call? And you don't have to give exact details, you know, because I don't think everybody needs to hear what it might be. And then maybe what was the most rewarding call you've ever had?
I mean, any call where you can hear like the person that's calling, it reminds you of someone that you know, or a situation that you've been in, or someone that you know love has been in, that it'll hit you a little bit harder, because you'll think, you know, like, oh, this could be, you know, my mom or my, you know, whoever, and so it almost takes that much more just to calm yourself down and know that it's just, you know, it's your job to help this person through whatever, their emergency is that day. I guess that would be the
hardest. Yeah.
In the most generic way. Rewarding calls are, it's weird.
Is there one for you that after you hung up, you said to yourself, "Dang, I just did that."
It's happened.
Yeah.
But there's not I don't have one example of that, because I'm kind of just, I think we're all designed that once you
That's your job.
take a call, you just erase it from the database and that's on to the next one.
Corinne, how do you cope with these traumas that you have to deal with possibly all day, every day? What are some of the coping things? Are there services available to you to talk things out? Is there like a design set up to where, hey, I just had this traumatic call and I lost someone over the phone?
Yeah.
To where you can go, like, that's set in place, or because I'm sure that you've got friends, relatives, co-workers that you lean on quite a bit in these kind of
Right.
situations, but professionally, what kind of what's set in place?
Yeah, and just to touch back on what Dan said in terms of having that really good, gratifying call, I think you yourself personally don't feel it as much, but you hear it from the other TCs. Everybody in that room, teamwork is a must, and everybody in that room is great about recognizing how well somebody did on a call. Because as he said, we're kind of trained to do this as our job, and there's times that we don't recognize how well we handled it, and it takes, words from another coworker to tell us that.
Oh, you're right. In everyday work,
right.
I mean, sometimes you don't realize
Right.
what you do, and someone says, "Wow,
Exactly.
man, you did great there." And
Right.
you didn't well, I'm just
Right.
doing my job. Right.
Exactly. But in terms of the other, we have a critical incident stress management team available to us that we can talk with. There are debriefings that we can go to if there's a major incident involving the fire department or police department. So the city does make those services available to us. But for the most part, I think we really rely on each other. We all work together well, and it's obviously a close group. In the room at a time, we're all very aware of each other's kind of quirks, maybe. So we can tell when
You're
maybe
human, right?
right. But you can kind of tell when somebody maybe needs to get up and take a walk and then come back to their desk. So.
A couple minutes left. What are some tips and tricks for a caller calling in? Just general kind of things that they can kind of expect that you tell them, like, okay, here's what I need from you, or maybe they can, when they call in, already kind of have an idea of, here's the information that I'm going to need to be able to tell the dispatcher.
Yeah, first thing, if you're calling from a cell phone, we need your location. We're not like TV shows, we don't know exactly where you're at, so location is big. And the other...
There's fair accuracy, because there's a triangulation involved, I guess, right,
exactly.
between cell towers, but it's not exact.
It's not exact, right. And that
Do you have access through records of what address, like, the home bill goes to? But that doesn't always mean anything.
And that could take minutes to even hours to get.
Really?
Yeah, it's not instant like
Okay.
everybody thinks it is. So I think that's one of the main keys that we would like to focus on. The other is just please listen to us. It's hard, and I understand that everybody's, obviously if they're calling 911, they're in a stressful situation, but it's just a matter of listening to what we're asking and just answering the questions.
Saw one recently where a telecommunicator was on the phone with a wife that was being abused, and she called in as if she was calling in and ordering a pizza. Have you seen this one?
Yes. Yep.
And I mean, the dispatcher the telecommunicator pretty quickly picked up on,
Exactly.
can you not answer these questions? Are you
Right.
in danger? Yes. How soon will that be here? It was the caller's
Exactly.
question. And it's amazing how quickly they picked up on it. I mean, it was in a matter of seconds
It's
on
one
that
of those,
video.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think where, especially as you've done the job more and more, you can hear things in people's tone of voice, maybe the way they're talking or not. But I think we've all kind of taken a call from someone pretending to be a relative or, something before they hung up.
So even if you don't feel that it's safe for you to make a call, there are ways kind of around it. Or
yes,
there are ways that if you can't talk.
right, please dial 911 and leave the phone open, and we will do our best to find you. Obviously, if you can say something to us, that's obviously the best. But yeah, if you can't talk, call 911 and we will do our absolute best to try and locate you.
Yeah, and hopefully people see why we're doing this. I mean, it's so important, the job that they do, and I think with that, maybe you can recap. She just came in, was Katie Pott, and she is the sergeant over the entire unit of the communications center. So maybe Katie, you could just introduce yourself, and we're right at the end here, but maybe you can just kind of what your thoughts are as far as the work that your people do.
Hi, Katie Pott. Like he had mentioned, I work at the Elgin Police Department, been there for 15 years, but I've taken over the director position of communications since January, and one of the things I did was to try and learn what they do. I have learned how to answer calls on the phone, and it is completely different than being on the other side of the radio. So what they do is amazing. The patience that they have and how they handle the calls that come in, and everyone the same and professional, is to be commended, and I'm very excited to be their supervisor. So.
In the time, maybe touch on how technology has changed what the telecommunicators do. And maybe this would have been a better question for Corinne, because I think in years past, if you got a call and you then had to call and dispatch, how that was done versus now where it's all computerized and that information is being sent out almost real time, or real time actually.
Watching them work, and when a call comes in, they start entering it, and it is being sent to somebody else who's actually going to dispatch it out. So while they're still talking to somebody on the phone, officers are being dispatched by somebody else. But at the same time, they're searching all of our databases, any database that we have available on the 8 computer screens that they have, and they're searching, talking, and relaying information. So it's the amount of technology is just, it's a lot to help them to locate the people that we need, as well as to provide detailed information to the fire department or the police officers before they actually get on scene. So it's definitely changed. We used to say stamp the card, because you used to handwrite everything. When I first started, it was like they'd handwrite it to try and get it done, and they do fall back on that same if the power's out or something, cat goes down. But so they know both aspects of it.
Where does the training come in? Because I mean, any call can be different. To where do they get the information to say, let me walk you through the steps of CPR? Are they trained and certified in CPR? And childbirth, I mean, what to do if there's, I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, I've just learned
know what
this
the call's
part.
going to be,
Yeah, I've just learned this part, but we use a company that, it's called PowerPhone, and they get training on it. It is, like and they have their flip cards, and they listen to the call, and based on what the caller's telling them, they determine what level of EMD response, or their fire response and police. They used to just do EMD, but we've trained them to do a police and fire response as well for certain types of calls. There's information that they say are the most important things to get for the officers or fire personnel before they get on scene. So they flip these cards and they read down and they go back and forth between them.
Interesting stuff, man.
We can keep talking about it for a while. I think kind of the recap as well is just when you do call the police, know that they're professionals that are answering the phone. They'll get you the help very quickly. You just need to listen, and most importantly, tell them where you're at. And if you don't know the exact street, just try and give us some type of, I see a blue water tower. I know I was on Randall Road, and start getting us something. But the person you're talking to is not the person that's dispatching the police or fire. So you get people frustrated saying, just send the police. Enough with the questions.
They're coming.
They are coming. Another person's sending them. This person's just getting the information, typing as they're talking to you, and another person's getting that information. So, as difficult as it can be, try to remain calm, as Greene said. Listen, answer the questions, and help is on the way. So,
do you do tours of the police department for average citizen from Elgin that would want to come in and maybe
all the time
walk through, or see the communications division where they walk through so that they can kind of see maybe what they don't understand? Yeah,
and we just started, like I said, our Citizen Police Academy. The first night is part of the tour, and so we had, I think, 40 people on a tour last night. But Christy Schmidt, Sherry Eschenbrunner, you call it Community Relations Crime Prevention Bureau, they can set up a tour. We do it all the time for Boy Scouts, schools. Right. There's probably not a day that goes by that you don't see a group of people, whether sometimes they're adults and many times they're just 5 and 10-year-olds that come walking through. So anytime anybody wants to do that, we can definitely set it up.
You guys have anything else that you wanted to add? I want to leave it with you, the experts there.
Just really quick, I just want to kind of follow up on what the chief said in terms of us answering the phone and somebody else dispatching while we're talking. Also remember that the same people that answer 911 answer the non-emergency lines also. So a lot of times citizens call non-emergency, and we have to keep putting them on hold to answer a 911 line coming in.
Gotcha.
And I think a lot of times they have a hard time understanding that the same person is answering both calls.
Interesting, because I've called in before to try to get information, and I call the general number.
Right.
And I've been told you need to call 911. But not necessarily Elgin.
Right, I was gonna say,
Right.
depending on the city you live in, yes,
Interesting.
that may in fact be
And
true.
I was always like,
Right, but
didn't I just let you know that I wasn't calling in an emergency, or
yeah, it depends on the community you live in. Some cities don't have a centralized local dispatch at their own, in their own town.
I gotcha.
So
Well,
if
that
they
would be
have
like the telecoms and
yeah,
the
like
different
a
companies.
Kate County or
Yeah.
a Quadcom.
Yeah, Quadcom, yeah.
Right. So then they would probably tell you to call 911 so that you can actually speak with a dispatcher. But with us having non-emergency and emergency lines here, we answer both. So it's just something I think citizens, need to be aware of also.
Chief, when was the last time you sat in the communications room?
I was there last night. But don't ask me before that. Because even when I was there, I said, man, I saw some new faces. I said, I got to get in here more often. I confessed to last time, I'm not in here nearly enough. But it's nice that you asked. I could say last night, actually.
I also threw that out there because I had an inkling, and we didn't talk about this, that knowing you as I do, that you've been there before.
Oh, I've been in
And I think there's probably
right.
chiefs in other towns that don't know their telecommunicators, and I'm sure that you know. So,
Well,
and you know
I
what they go
appreciate
through.
that.
So,
I appreciate that. Not as well as I probably should, but I appreciate that. And I know we're ending up, but a couple of very quick things, if you don't mind.
Please.
Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we're doing a pinwheel project,
Yep.
Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so come on out to the police department at 10 o'clock at a nice short program. We have our canine out there. It's a nice event. So if you drive by, see a bunch of pinwheels on the side of the police department, that's what it's for. And then next week, Commander Lally is going to be here with, I believe it's Officer Spacer, talking about distracted driving and all the things that our traffic division's doing to try and reduce crashes by people not paying attention while they're driving. So that'll be next week.
anytime Commander Lally comes in, we don't want you back for a while.
I know.
She's that good.
I agree. I agree. So she might have the job for a little while.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
you.
Have a great weekend, and appreciate, as always, Jeff coming in and bringing in the guests like you do so often unannounced. It keeps it fresh. I love it.
does.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're listening to AM 1410, WRMN.
And Elgin.